kind of know that this might happen. You don't really think about it very much. Not least of all because the monarchy is about continuity.
A letter was never meant to leave the room it was written in. Now it has, and the palace has not been the same since. The letter that broke the silence. Nobody was supposed to know it existed. That is the part the palace cannot get past, not the contents or the timing. The simple, devastating fact that something written in total privacy, sealed with the kind of trust that only family carries, found its way out. And once something like that gets out, there is no pulling it back. On a Tuesday morning in late April 2025, a British media outlet received a package. It was not dramatic in appearance, no elaborate delivery. There was no anonymous tip passed through layers of sources. Just a document, several pages, handwritten in parts, typed in others. And at the top, a name that stopped every editor in that building cold: Catherine. Not a spokesperson or a palace aide. Not a carefully worded institutional statement dressed up to sound personal. Catherine herself, the Princess of Wales, writing directly to her brother-in-law, Prince Harry, Duke of Sussex. A private letter, deeply personal, emotionally raw in places, and now sitting in the hands of people who had absolutely no business reading it. The outlet sat on it for 72 hours. That detail matters, because it tells you they knew what they had. They were not rushing. They were verifying and weighing the consequences. And when they finally published, the reaction inside Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace was, by every account, immediate and total. One senior royal aide described the moment the story broke as feeling like the floor had opened up. That is not an exaggeration. This was not a leaked photograph or a second-hand account from a disgruntled staff member. It was a primary document written by the Princess of Wales, addressed to a man who, depending on who you ask inside those palace walls, is either a deeply wounded brother or the most dangerous figure the modern monarchy has produced. And here is where the open question begins. How did it get out? Nobody inside the palace is saying publicly. That silence is telling. Because in royal circles, silence is never accidental. Silence is a strategy. And right now, the strategy appears to be containment. Say nothing, confirm nothing. Hope the story burns itself out before it does permanent damage. But the problem with that strategy is that the letter exists. People have read it. And what is inside it does not burn quietly. To understand why this letter matters so much, you have to understand the moment it was written in. Catherine did not write this letter in a period of calm. She wrote it during one of the most privately turbulent stretches of her life. 19 months before the leak, she had been diagnosed with cancer. She had stepped back from public duties. She had undergone surgery and then chemotherapy. She had faced the kind of fear that strips everything else away and leaves only what is real. And in that space, something shifted. People who have faced serious illness often describe a clarity that arrives in the middle of the worst of it. A sudden impatience with things left unsaid. A refusal to carry unresolved weight any longer. Those who know Catherine personally have described her as a woman who emerged from her cancer treatment fundamentally changed, not broken. Changed, more direct, more willing to name what she feels, less willing to perform composure at the expense of truth. The letter, sources say, reflects exactly that version of Catherine. It is not aggressive. It is not a list of grievances. Those who have read it describe it as something harder to categorize than that. It is honest. It is measured in places and raw in others. And it speaks to things that have sat between Catherine and Harry for years without ever being fully addressed. Things that predate Meghan. Things that go back to the early years, when the four of them, William, Catherine, Harry, and Meghan, briefly moved in overlapping orbits and the fractures were just beginning to form beneath the surface. What those things are specifically will be addressed in this video. But what matters here is the context. Catherine wrote this letter as a woman who had stared down her own mortality and decided that certain silences had gone on long enough. She wrote it as a sister-in-law who had watched the fallout from Harry's departure tear through her husband's family in ways the public only partially understands. And she wrote it, sources indicate, with no expectation that anyone other than Harry would ever read it. That expectation turned out to be catastrophically wrong. The question of who leaked it is not a simple one. The document passed through at least two sets of hands before it reached the media outlet that published it. Palace investigators, working quietly and without any public announcement, have been attempting to trace the chain, but the letter was sent privately, not through official palace channels, which means the usual institutional safeguards did not apply. Some royal watchers have pointed toward the Sussex Circle in California, the logic being that Harry received the letter, and therefore Harry, or someone close to him, controlled what happened to it next. Sussex sources have pushed back on that characterization firmly and repeatedly. They insist Harry had nothing to do with the leak. They describe him as blindsided and furious in equal measure. Others have suggested the leak originated closer to home, that someone within the British royal household, or connected to it, made a calculation. Perhaps they believed the contents of the letter would shift public sympathy in a particular direction. Perhaps the leak was designed not to damage Catherine, but to damage Harry, or to damage both. Royal politics at this level are rarely clean. What is certain is this: the letter is out, the palace is stunned, Catherine is reportedly devastated, and Harry, sitting 5,500 miles away in Montecito, is now at the center of a storm he may or may not have seen coming. The silence from both sides is deafening, and in royal circles, when everyone goes quiet at the same time, it almost always means the real story is still emerging. Because what Catherine actually wrote in that letter is more complicated, human, and more consequential than anything the initial headline suggested. What Catherine actually said. Nobody wanted to believe it was real. That was the first reaction from several royal correspondents when the contents began circulating. Because what the letter describes is not the carefully managed version of events the palace has spent years constructing. It is something messier, something more human, and something that cuts directly against the official narrative that the rift between the Wales family and the Sussexes is simply a matter of distance and different choices. Catherine did not write a short note. Sources with direct knowledge of the letter's contents describe it as several pages long, thoughtful in structure, not written in a single sitting. There are sections that read like they were drafted carefully, words chosen with precision. And there are other sections that read like they were written fast, emotion outrunning caution. The pen moving before the second thoughts could catch up. That contrast alone tells you something important. This was not a letter Catherine dashed off in a moment of frustration. This was something she returned to, something she worked on, something she wanted to get right. So, what did she say? Sources who have reviewed the letter describe three distinct threads running through it. The first is personal, the second is painful, and the third is the one the palace is most desperate to contain. The personal thread comes first. Catherine opens by acknowledging the distance, not the geographical distance between Windsor and Montecito, though that is present too, the emotional distance, the slow accumulation of silences, missed calls and public statements that said one thing, while private feelings ran in an entirely different direction. She does not assign blame in this section. She simply names what happened. The way two people who were once in the same room began existing in entirely separate worlds. Those who have read it say this opening section is surprisingly tender. Catherine writes about the early years, the period around 2016 and 2017, before everything became public and political and irreversible. She writes about moments that have never appeared in any biography or documentary.
To get over was being blamed for something that not only I didn't do.
Small, specific, private moments between the four of them. Moments that clearly mattered to her. Moments she has apparently been carrying for a long time. And then the tone shifts. The second thread is where the letter becomes painful. Catherine addresses the Oprah interview directly. Not the entire interview, a specific section of it, a claim that was made during that broadcast in March 2021 that struck Catherine in a way she has never publicly spoken about. She addresses it by name and with clarity, and she addresses it, sources say, with a composure that makes it even more striking than if she had written in anger. The claim in question involves a conversation that allegedly took place before Harry and Meghan's wedding in 2018. A conversation about a flower girl dress. A conversation that became one of the most debated moments of that entire interview. Meghan stated during the Oprah broadcast that Catherine had made her cry during a disagreement over that dress. Catherine later issued a brief statement through the palace suggesting the opposite had occurred, but she never elaborated. She never explained. She moved on publicly while carrying the weight of it privately. In the letter, she elaborates. She does not savage Meghan. That matters. Sources are clear on this point. The letter is not an attack on Harry's wife, but it is a detailed account of what Catherine says actually happened during that exchange. It includes context that has never been made public. It includes her emotional state at the time. And it includes a question she says she has wanted to ask Harry directly for years. Well, why did you not correct it? Not why did Meghan say it? Why did Harry, who Catherine says was present for at least part of that period, allow a version of events to go unchallenged in front of millions of people? That question sits at the center of the second thread. And it is the question that sources say carries the most pain, because it is not really about a flower girl dress. It is about whether Harry chose his wife's narrative over his family's truth, and whether that choice was made consciously. That is a question with no clean answer, and Catherine knows it. Sources say the letter does not demand a response to that question. It simply places it on the table. After years of it sitting unspoken, she places it down and leaves it there. The third thread is the one the palace feared most. Catherine writes about William, not extensively, but enough. She describes what the public breakdown of the brothers' relationship has cost her husband privately. She does not traffic in specifics that would embarrass William directly, but she describes a man who has carried grief about his brother's departure in ways he has never been able to show publicly. And she talks about the performance of composure that William delivers every single day, and she describes what it costs him at the end of those days. This section, sources say, is the shortest in the letter, but it is the section that landed hardest inside the palace when the contents became known. Because Catherine was not writing for public consumption, she was writing as a wife describing her husband's private pain to the person who caused a significant portion of it. That is a deeply vulnerable thing to put into words. And it is exactly the kind of vulnerability that should never have left the room it was written in. She closes the letter without ultimatums or demands. She simply says she wrote it because she believes silence has done enough damage. She says she does not know if Harry will respond, and she is not sure what she wants the response to even look like. She needed him to know. That final section, sources describe as almost unbearably human. A woman who has been watched by the entire world for over a decade, writing something that the entire world was never supposed to see, and now it has. Which means the next question is unavoidable. What did Harry do when he read it? Harry's reaction and the transatlantic fallout. He read it alone. That is the detail Sussex sources keep returning to. Harry received the letter privately. No aides present, no Meghan in the room, just him and several pages of his sister-in-law's handwriting. And whatever happened in that room, whatever crossed his face as he worked through those pages, nobody is talking about it directly. But the aftermath is easier to trace. Within 48 hours of Harry receiving the letter, something shifted inside the Sussex household in Montecito. Sources close to the couple describe a period of unusual tension, not between Harry and Meghan specifically, but a kind of atmospheric heaviness that settled over their home and did not lift quickly. Staff noticed it. People in their immediate circle noticed it. Harry went quiet, not the performative quiet of someone managing a public situation, the deeper quiet of someone genuinely unsettled, someone processing something that had arrived without warning and landed harder than expected. Because here is what Sussex sources will quietly acknowledge, even while denying any involvement in the leak. The letter surprised him. Whatever Harry expected from Catherine, whatever version of her feelings he had constructed in his mind across the years of distance and silence, the letter did not match it. It was more direct than he anticipated, more detailed, and in places more generous than he perhaps felt he deserved. That generosity, sources suggest, may have been the hardest part to sit with. When you are in a long-running dispute with family, it is easier when the other side behaves exactly as you expect. When they are cold or formal or aggressive, it confirms the story you have been telling yourself. But when someone reaches across that distance with honesty and vulnerability and asks a question without demanding an answer, the story becomes harder to hold onto. Harry has not responded publicly. That much is confirmed. No statement or social media post. No comment through a spokesperson beyond the brief denial of any involvement in the leak. The silence from Montecito has been almost as loud as the letter itself. Meghan's response has been equally guarded. People close to her describe someone who is deeply uncomfortable with the situation. But choosing her words with extreme care. She is aware that anything she says publicly will be dissected and weaponized regardless of intent. So, she has said nothing. But sources within the Sussex circle describe private conversations in which Meghan has expressed frustration, not about the letter's content specifically, about the position it puts them in. Because the leak, regardless of who is responsible for it, has handed the British press exactly what it has always wanted: a direct window into the unresolved pain between these two families. And the Sussex camp knows that in the court of British public opinion, they begin every news cycle at a disadvantage. The transatlantic fallout has been swift. In Britain, the letter dominated front pages for 4 consecutive days after publication. Royal commentators lined up to offer analysis. The dominant narrative in the British press positioned Catherine sympathetically, a woman who had survived cancer, who had maintained dignity under extraordinary pressure, who had finally reached out privately and been betrayed by the leak. Whether that betrayal originated with Harry or elsewhere was treated in many outlets as essentially settled, despite the absence of any evidence connecting him to it. In America, the coverage was more divided. Several outlets noted that the leak itself, regardless of the letter's contents, represented a serious violation of privacy. Some commentators pointed out that Catherine's account of the Flower Girl incident, however detailed, remains one side of a disputed story. Others focused on the emotional weight of what she wrote about William, describing it as a rare and unguarded moment from a royal family that rarely allows the public to see anything unguarded at all. Harry's team is aware of all of it. They monitor the coverage closely, and the picture being painted on both sides of the Atlantic is one they cannot easily correct, without doing the one thing they have so far refused to do: respond directly. That decision, to stay silent or to speak, is now the central tension inside the Sussex household, because silence reads as guilt to some, but speaking means engaging with the contents of a letter that was never supposed to be public. It means confirming details, disputing others, and reopening wounds that Harry has spent years trying to frame as closed. There is no clean exit from this situation, and that is exactly what makes William's reaction, happening simultaneously across the Atlantic inside Kensington Palace, so significant. Because William knew about the letter. The question is how much he knew and when. William's silent fury. He did not shout. That is what people who know William well will tell you about how he handles the moments that cut deepest. He does not raise his voice. He does not throw things or storm out of rooms. He goes still, quiet in a way that is somehow more unsettling than anger. The people closest to him have learned to read that stillness. They know what it means. And when the letter story broke publicly, the stillness that descended over William was, by all accounts, significant. He knew the letter existed. That detail is important. William was not blindsided by the existence of the letter the way the palace machinery around him was. Catherine had told him she intended to write it. Sources close to the couple confirmed that the decision to reach out to Harry was something Catherine and William discussed. Not once, but several times, over months during her recovery, during the long, quiet stretches of a cancer treatment that strips a person down to what they actually believe and what they actually feel. William had reservations. That is putting it carefully. Sources describe him as deeply uncomfortable with the idea, not because he did not understand Catherine's reasons. He understood them completely. But because William, more than almost anyone alive, knows how information moves inside and around the royal family. He knows how things leak and how words get twisted. He knows that something written with sincerity can be extracted from its context and turned into a weapon before the ink has dried. He raised those concerns. Catherine heard them. And then she wrote the letter anyway. That decision, sources say, is not a source of conflict between them now. William does not blame Catherine for writing it. He never did. What he is struggling with is something colder and more specific than blame. It is the question of how it got out. And the answer to that question, wherever it ultimately lands, carries consequences he is not fully prepared for. Because here is what William is sitting with privately. If the leak came from the Sussex side, Harry, or someone within his circle, then it represents something he will struggle to move past. It would mean that Catherine extended a private olive branch, and it was used against her. Against them. That the gesture of honesty and vulnerability his wife made during one of the most difficult periods of her life was treated as material, as ammunition. That is not something William would forgive easily. It is not something he would forgive at all. But if the leak did not come from Harry, if it came from somewhere closer, from within the British royal apparatus itself, then the implications are, in some ways, even more disturbing. It would mean there is someone inside their world, inside the tight circle of people who are supposed to be trusted absolutely, who made a deliberate choice to expose Catherine, for reasons that remain unclear and an agenda that has not yet fully revealed itself. William is reportedly pursuing both possibilities simultaneously. Quietly, without any public announcement, palace investigators are working. Questions are being asked. Loyalty is being assessed in ways that the people being assessed may not even be aware of. That is how William operates, not loudly, methodically, and then quietly mentioned it to someone they trusted. By the end of the day, the entire household knew. By the following morning, it had reached people outside the palace walls. But beneath that methodology, sources describe something raw, something that connects directly to the section of Catherine's letter that described his private pain. Because William did not know she had written about that. He did not know she had put into words, for Harry's eyes, the cost of what the public breakdown of their brotherhood has meant to him personally. When he read those sections of the letter, after the leak, after seeing what Catherine had written about him in private, the reaction was complicated. Sources describe a man who was simultaneously moved and exposed. Moved because his wife had seen him clearly and written about it with love. Exposed because that clarity, that private truth about his grief, was now being read and analyzed by strangers. William has spent years constructing a public version of himself that is composed, forward-facing, and entirely in control of the narrative around his family. He learned that discipline the hard way. He watched what happened when his mother allowed her private pain to become public. He watched the institution fracture under the weight of emotions that were never supposed to be visible. He swore, in the way that only someone who has lived through that kind of damage can swear, that he would never allow the same thing to happen to his family. And now it has happened anyway, not through recklessness, or through a moment of weakness, but through an act of love by his wife that was intercepted by forces neither of them fully understands yet. The fury is there. Sources are clear about that. But it is not directed at Catherine, it is directed outward. At whoever made the calculation that this letter was something the world needed to see. At whoever looked at Catherine's private words and saw an opportunity rather than a violation. There is one more layer to William's reaction that sources describe carefully and without much detail. His feelings about Harry right now are not simple. They never have been. But this situation has added a new dimension to an already impossibly complicated dynamic. William does not know if his brother leaked the letter. He genuinely does not know, and that uncertainty, that inability to be certain about something this significant, is perhaps the most destabilizing part of all, because if he assumes Harry is responsible and pursues that assumption, he risks severing something that may still, against all odds, be repairable. And if he assumes Harry is innocent and acts accordingly, he risks leaving the real source of the leak unaddressed and unaccountable. There is no safe move here. And William, who has spent his entire adult life trying to find the safe move, is sitting with that reality right now, which brings everything to the question the palace cannot avoid much longer. What happens next? And can any of this be contained before it does permanent damage? What happens next? The palace has a playbook for crises. Most people do not know it exists, but it does. It has been refined across decades of scandals, divorces, arrests, and revelations that would have destroyed lesser institutions. The playbook is not written down anywhere. It lives in the institutional memory of senior aides, who have seen everything and learned exactly how much silence, how much carefully timed distraction, and how much managed narrative it takes to move the public's attention from one story to the next. They are running that playbook right now. But there is a problem, and the problem is significant. The playbook was designed for a different era. It was built for a time when the palace controlled the information, when a story could be killed with a phone call to an editor, for a time when the news cycle moved slowly enough that carefully managed silence could do its work. Before the damage became permanent, that era is over. And the people running the playbook know it. They just do not have a better one yet. The letter is everywhere. It has been republished, dissected, screenshotted, and translated. Clips of royal commentators reading sections of it aloud have accumulated millions of views. The specific passages about William's private grief have been quoted so many times that they have taken on a life entirely separate from the letter itself. You cannot unring this bell. The palace knows that. Catherine knows that. And somewhere in Montecito, Harry knows that too. So, the internal security deployment within the palace follows patterns refined over decades. Certain areas are always guarded, some never are. What does containment actually look like from here? The first move the palace made was the most predictable. No comment. Full institutional silence. No confirmation that the letter is authentic. No denial either. Just a wall of carefully maintained nothing. The logic being that any engagement with the story, any statement that acknowledges specific details, legitimizes the leak and invites more questions than it answers. That wall is held for now. But it is showing pressure because the letter's authenticity has not been seriously challenged by anyone with genuine knowledge of the situation. Royal correspondents who have covered Catherine for years have noted things, the voice in the letter. The specific phrasing and the emotional texture of it is consistent with everything they know about her privately. Nobody credible is arguing it is a fabrication. And that silence on the authenticity question speaks as loudly as any official statement could. The second move involves Catherine herself. Sources describe a woman who is privately devastated by the leak, but publicly determined not to show it. She has continued her engagements and appeared at events. She has done what the Wales family does when something catastrophic is happening behind closed doors. She has shown up and smiled and given the cameras exactly nothing to work with. But those around her describe someone carrying a specific kind of hurt that is difficult to conceal entirely. The hurt of having offered something genuine and having it taken from her. She reached out to Harry with honesty. Whatever her reasons, whatever the outcome she was hoping for, she did it from a real place. And that real place is now public property. Analyzed, debated, judged by people who have never met her and never will. Sources say she has asked one question repeatedly in private conversations since the leak. A question that nobody around her can answer with any certainty. Did he do it? That question is the wound at the center of everything right now, and it has not closed. The third dimension of what happens next involves Harry directly. He is not simply a passive figure in this situation. He is being asked by everyone around him to make a decision. The decision is simple to state and almost impossible to execute cleanly. Does he speak or does he stay silent? His advisors are divided. Some believe that continued silence is the only rational position, that anything Harry says will be used to extend the story rather than end it, that the British press will take whatever he offers and construct the worst possible version of it regardless of his intentions. Stay quiet, let it fade. That is one camp. The other camp believes silence is being read as guilt, that every day Harry says nothing, the narrative hardens around him as the source of the leak. And at some point, the cost of silence exceeds the cost of speaking, that a carefully worded statement, not about the letter's contents but about the violation of Catherine's privacy, could shift the dynamic without opening new wounds. Harry has not decided yet, or if he has, the decision has not been made public. That uncertainty is itself a story, and the longer it continues, the more space it creates for other people to fill. Meanwhile, the deeper question sits underneath all of this, the one that the leak has forced into the open, whether anyone wanted it there or not. Is reconciliation between these two families still possible? Catherine wrote that letter because she believed on some level that it was, that the silence had gone on long enough, that something real and honest passing between her and Harry might create a small opening, not a resolution. Not a sudden warmth that erased years of public conflict. Just an opening, a crack in a wall that has been getting thicker since 2020. The leak has complicated that possibility enormously. It has made vulnerability feel dangerous. It has reminded everyone involved that private words are never fully safe, and it has given both sides reasons to pull back rather than forward. But here's the thing about Catherine that sources return to again and again. She is not easily discouraged. She is not someone who extends herself once and retreats permanently when it does not go smoothly. The same quality that got her through cancer treatment. or a response to a general threat assessment. It was a response to Catherine, the same quality that has kept her standing through years of scrutiny and pressure, and moments that would have broken people with less core. That quality does not simply switch off because a letter got leaked. She wrote it because she meant it. The leak did not change what she meant. Whether Harry understands that, whether he is capable of receiving it in the spirit it was intended, is the question that will quietly define whatever comes next between these two families. The palace will manage the story. The press will move to the next headline eventually. William will pursue whoever is responsible for the leak with the quiet, methodical determination that defines everything he does. But the letter exists. What Catherine wrote exists. And somewhere in Montecito, Harry has read every word of it. What he does with that is the only thing left that actually matters. The letter was never meant to be read by the world, but the world has read it now. Catherine reached across years of silence with honesty. What happens next depends entirely on whether Harry can meet that honesty with the same courage. The palace is watching. So is everyone else.